Up next on Inside the SCCA, talking runoffs with a guy who knows how to get it done. On this episode of Inside the SCCA, yeah, I do 2 episodes. Both are called Inside Something, and I mistakenly said the other one. But on Inside the SCCA, I am honored to have with me an SCCA legend. One might actually consider him the GOAT. But we'll get to that in a minute. 16-time SCCA National Champion John Heinricy. Hello there. How are you?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing great. Hope you are too.
I'm doing great. We had some technical difficulties, but we're past them now. And we're going to kick back and have a good 45 minutes or hours worth of conversation here. So I've got you on the show for a ton of reasons. I don't actually need a reason because you're a 16-time champion. So there's a lot of brain to be picked there. There's a lot of stories to be told if I can get them out of you. But we are a week away from your opportunity to win. How many races are you entered into next week?
Just one.
All right, so we're a week away from your opportunity at a 17th National Championship. Do you think about it that way, or do you just go and do a race?
I think it's more going to a race.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the number of championships or anything like that. It's all about winning it.
Do you prepare differently for the 17th than you did for the first?
Not that I know of. I maybe am not quite as capable of preparing it as I used to be, but I still go about it pretty much the same way. I still am hell on details, just making sure we've got all the details covered and all the possibilities. We've got a plan for everything. So, just try to have all the I's dotted, T's crossed, and all that kind of thing, and then go at it. Seems like I think the more pressure, the better, too.
Sure. So I start every show the same way, and I kind of diverted from this, but I'll get to it now. How did you get mixed up in this awesome sport that we love?
Wow. Well, if we're talking about racing, I think it's been in my blood. I've always been competitive since I was a little kid, especially competitive with anything that had engines, whether they're cars, trucks, pickups, tractors, you name it. So I always was very competitive about doing everything. And I seem to have a knack for it right from the get-go. As soon as I started driving cars and driving them in high school and that kind of thing, I didn't have much in the way of my own cars, nothing but junkers in high school, but I had friends who had cars and they always let me drive them. And if there was ever a drag race or something like that was going on, they had me drive their car instead of them drive their car. So that kind of upbringing. And then I became an automotive engineer and went to work for GM, which is, I wanted to work for Chevrolet. And I got that job and went to work for Chevrolet. And after I'd been there probably something like 13, 14 years, I just by chance kind of got involved in some of the racing that was going on at GM at that time, and much more on the grassroots side, like running the 24-hour Nelson Ledges kind of things, the longest day races.
Right.
There were some efforts in especially the Camaro group to support Dick Gullstrand, who was running in those events. And I got to know Dick, and that kind of led me in the direction of road racing. Started at a pretty old age, relatively speaking. I was 37 when I got my first racing license.
Wow!
And that was at the urging of Dick. I said, "Well, what do I need to do here? I want to race, and I'd like to drive one of your cars if I could," and that kind of thing. He says, "I don't know if you're any good at it." And need to find that out, but really you need to go to get a license before you do anything. And so he told me what I had to do, and I went at getting my license, got that done, and started doing some driving on the Morrison, Cook and Gullstrand team back in 1984, and that kind of got me started.
Was that the team that ended up doing Corvette Challenge at some point?
We never did the Corvette Challenge. We
Okay.
did the Escort Challenge. We did the Playboy
Right.
series, and then the Escort series, and then the Corvette Challenge started after that.
Okay.
And since I worked at GM, it was a conflict of interest for me to drive in that series, so I didn't run that series.
Okay.
I continued in the Escort series in Camaros with Tommy Morrison.
Got it.
And then after that was over, then the World Challenge started, and then I raced Corvettes in World Challenge.
Sure. So you said, you became an automotive engineer and you always wanted to work for GM. You could have ended up, on the Chevette or the Cavalier, but you worked your way into the good cars, right?
Well, I did that too.
Okay.
I worked on all the mundane cars, let's say, that there are.
Sure.
I spent a lot of time on those before I ever got to the Corvette.
Got it.
But I jumped, believe it or not, I jumped out of celebrities and citations into the Corvette,
That's
that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the guys who were in the Corvette area at that time knew me. I was friends with them, and
Okay.
they knew I was a car nut and a go fast kind of person and that sort of thing. And so they thought it would be a natural fit, and it turned out to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, because you would think possibly that when you're the Corvette guys know there's a citation and Chevette guy coming over, they might give you a hard time.
Yeah, but they were slower, so that got past that.
There you go.
I just had to beat them.
So what was it like at GM during that time with the Camaro and I guess the Corvette? That was kind of in an era where, we were coming out of fuel economy and cars were still felt like the U.S. muscle car was neutered at that point in time. And it was just kind of coming out of that, right?
Yes, when I started getting into the Camaro and Corvette area, that was just when it was starting to pull out of that, just converting from carburetors into throttle body injection and then port fuel injection.
Right.
So it was just moving into that at the same time that I was coming into it. So it was probably a good time. It was kind of like if you were back in the early 60s and coming into the muscle car era. And this was kind of the start then of something that's been going on for a lot longer than the muscle car era did, when you think about it. This would have been 1982, 83 time frame all the way up to here. So it's been a 40-year run, really.
Right. So I'm a teen of the 80s, and I discovered cars in the 80s. And I was not a fan of the generation of Corvette before the 84, 85, 86, when they made the body style change there. And then they made that body style change. And to this day, my dream car, my high school dream car, is the 88 Corvette.
Yeah.
They had gotten through kind of all the growing pains of getting the throttle body injectors working and all that kind of stuff. The suspension was upgraded at 88. And and now, today, if I'm looking around on Auto Trader, I can find those 88 Corvettes for, 10 grand, $8 grand, still running. And out here in California, there probably isn't much rust. So I'm thinking this might be the time for me to get my dream car.
Might be.
Yeah.
I just sold my last C4 about 2 years ago.
Wow. That must have been, was it hard to let it go?
It kind of was, yeah. It was pretty special. It was a 96 Grand Sport, and it was serial number 1.
You had the number 1?
Number 1, yeah, serial number 1.
Wow.
I had owned it since 95. It was a pilot vehicle.
Yeah.
In the 496.
I won't ask you what you sold it for, but I can only imagine that went for a nice little pretty penny.
It was okay.
Yeah, it was okay. That's well said. Well said. So the evolution of the Corvette from 88 to today, I think in 88, the U.S. sports car market was kind of looked down upon from the rest of the world. And today, the Corvette, no one's looking down on that car.
Yeah, there was a pretty significant turnaround on the Corvette after 88. So starting in 1990, 89, 90, 91 with the ZR1.
Yep.
When we did the new engine for the ZR1 and did the wide body and then followed up with the LT1 engine in 1992 with a refresh on the body, and jumped to 300 horse on the standard engine. Those were, the ZR1 was billed as king of the hill at the time, and it really was.
Right.
I mean, that was one of the fastest, if not the fastest car you could buy at the time. And so I think that really changed the future for Corvette.
Who was running Chevy at that time? Do you remember?
Chevrolet at that time.
I'm just curious. Was that
it was Paul King, who was the engineering general manager at that time. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Paul King.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it was it a top-down decision to put efforts into that car? Because it seemed as though there wasn't a whole lot of interest up until about that time.
I think it was a Dave McClellan interest. I think Dave was the spark, really, that got all that going.
Sure. Well, thank you.
He was chief engineer on the Corvette at the time, took over for Zora Jontoff. He'd been there for a while, all through the C3, which was prior to the C4, obviously.
Right.
So he'd been through all that and really wanted to do the new car, and that was the C4. And then he really wanted to bring technology into it and go through the fuel injection, and was into the high horsepower and ABS brakes and traction control and all of those things. I credit Dave McClellan with doing a lot of that.
Right. Well, thank you, Dave. Those of us who are Corvette fans appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. At what point did Chevy decide to go all in on the endurance racing, the GT category? When did that all kind of happen?
That was 1999. That's with the C5.
Right.
We engaged Pratt & Miller as the source to build the cars and race the cars. And we had GM engineers tied in with Pratt & Miller working on the engineering of the cars. So that happened in 1999. And I was fortunate enough. I was, what was I at that time in 1999? I was the assistant chief engineer with Dave Hill on the C5. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the testing program for the racing Corvette with Pratt & Miller, and also got to drive the first two races, which was the Daytona 24-hour and the Sebring 12-hour.
12, yep.
In the first two cars. I drove with Andy Pilgrim and Scott Sharp.
Yeah, those are some guys who know what they're doing.
Yeah, they do.
So how important is it to a program like Corvette to have a guy with the level of engineering acumen that you have behind the seat of that race car, you being able to bring that feedback back after every session?
Well, I do think it's pretty important. It isn't absolutely necessary, but it sure can make things a whole lot easier.
Right.
If you can do it that way. So if you have somebody who is running the program, let's say, who understands that, even if they're not capable of it, if they understand it, then they still make it happen and allow it to happen and encourage it to happen. So you don't really have to have somebody who's knowing how to do it so much as somebody who really believes it needs to be done.
Right.
And then you can, even if that's the type of person you have who is running the program, then you just need to make sure you have all the right people working for you who are capable of doing those kind of things, and that you manage it properly. Sometimes I think that can be better, because for somebody like me, you can kind of get a little too bogged down in some of the details sometime and fail to see the bigger picture and keep it going. But that didn't seem to, in my case, that didn't hurt me. And I was able to get through all of that, but I can see where it could be a problem.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at the high level driver world. How you've got basically two different types of drivers. You've got people who've got a lot of engineering interest and background and really talk the engineering talk. And then you've got some high-level drivers who don't do any of that. They just get in a car, they strap it in, they mash the foot to the floor, they turn left, they turn right, and they're fast as can be. And it always surprises me how you can get to that level and not be able to tell anybody how the car's working.
Yeah. Well, you just need to give them some feedback, but that's where the engineers, usually there's some pretty strong engineering behind those people.
Right.
And that that all goes on and is applied, and the driver is obviously giving feedback and that kind of thing, but they don't really need to know much technically about what's going on.
Sure.
because they've got so much talent.
Sure. It's just when I talk, and I've been doing the journalism side of motorsports for a long time, and I can tell immediately when I'm talking to a driver which type of driver it is, by the way they answer the question. How is the car today? And some of them will get real into the weeds with it, and others will be like, yeah, it was okay. It was okay on the front half. It was not so good on the back half. I'm like, okay, I know what kind of driver you are. And then you talk to other folks, and you're like, yeah, we put a quarter here, we did a half here, and worked this way, and then we had to come and it's very interesting to me how there's different types of drivers, and they can both be just crazy fast.
Yeah. Most of the drivers that I've driven with are not the technical drivers.
So
and they've been really, really good. They're really, really good drivers, but they're not the what I call technical engineering type drivers.
Is it good to have both?
I think
from
it
a
is.
feedback standpoint.
I think that partners that I've had racing, running with like Stu Hayner, Don Knowles, guys who are not very technically oriented, but extremely good, just very fast.
Yeah.
And I thought that our discussions always were very good, and really came out with had some really good outcomes because of having that kind of a combination of me talking the technical part of it, and they're talking a little bit, I don't know, what do you call that talk they're doing?
Exactly. Exactly.
But they give feedback, and sometimes you really had to dig to get to understand what they're talking about.
So
really had to dig into it.
I imagine you know a guy, Dan Binks.
Sure.
I'm going to get Dan on the show one of these days, because the Binks family has a huge lineage in SCCA.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to have him on. He
just got inducted in the Hall of Fame, Corvette Hall of Fame.
I know he did. Just a very recent inductee into the Corvette Hall of Fame. He's kind of like almost like a soothsayer, isn't he? He's able to take that feedback from the best drivers on the techie side and the non-techie side and turn it into stuff, right?
Yeah, he sure does. He's been real successful doing it for a long time. So
yeah,
he's got the knack for that.
Yeah, he can listen, and I think he's really good at discerning what someone's saying even when they don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing skill as well.
Yeah, I had a really good engineer on the Pratt Miller team when I was driving with them in the C5Rs at Daytona and Sebring, who was just really good at asking the right questions and interpreting and trying something on the car that almost always worked.
Definitely. We're going to get back to talking the bigger Pro Series Corvette stuff at the end. Let's transition here for a moment, for longer than a moment, and talk runoffs and SCCA and your success there. When did you start doing that? Was that in '84? You said. You said you were late.
Well, my very first, when I got my license, was in 1984.
Okay.
And I ran a couple of regionals, whatever I had to run regionals, and then ran my first national at the end of the year. And then I had my full license. I won my first national down in Mid-Ohio. It was at the end of the year.
Okay.
The first one I entered. And then the very next year, I was racing in pro in the Escort Series, Playboy and Escort Series with the Morrison Cook team. And that was as a result of the Dick Bellstrand pushing me in that direction.
Sure. When did you start doing club racing? Beyond that.
Okay, I ran the Playboy, the Escort, the next Escort, and then I think my first runoffs was 1990.
I want to say 6 or 7, maybe, because it was at Mid-Ohio, right?
Okay, I won at Road Atlanta in GT1. My first runoffs win was at Road Atlanta in GT1.
Got it. Okay.
And that was in 1993.
Okay.
And I think I ran 91. I ran some GT in a Camaro, and I came in second at the runoffs. And then the next thing I did was run GT1 in the Corvette in 93, and I won the runoffs there. And then I didn't run any more nationals or any more runoffs until 2001. So I didn't really start running SCCA seriously and run runoffs until basically 2001.
Got it. Got it. And when was your first? Remember what your first national championship was?
Yeah, that was with the GT1 Corvette in 1993.
Okay.
And then when I came back again, it was 2001.
Okay, so you had 6 or 7 years between them.
Yeah, that I never ran any nationals or club racing during that time.
Sure, sure.
I was doing all pro stuff at the time.
So you had won in 93, you came back in 2001. So basically the last 22 years, you've collected 15 medals.
Right, right.
And how many non-first places, how many podiums do you have? Do you have any idea?
I really don't know. I know there's a place I can go find that, but
Yeah.
I don't really know.
What is?
I think I have, if not the best, I think I have pretty close to the best ratio
Right.
of entering runoffs to championships.
Sure, sure.
Somebody told me that. I haven't looked it up myself.
And you ran more than one car several years, right?
I ran 2 quite a few years, and I ran 3 a couple times.
Okay.
That's a chore.
Yeah.
And 2 is still a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I had the range covered, and I think it was 2016, I believe, down at Daytona. I ran the slowest car on Daytona, the fastest car on the Daytona, and one right in between. So I had the Bielanski Sonic, which had a top speed of about 112 miles an hour. And my GT1 car ran 202 at Daytona, and then my A sedan car was like 175, 74, something like that.
So how do you train your brain to be able to realize, like, obviously real, but to adapt yourself so quickly from one car so slow to a 200-mile-an-hour car coming out of turn 4 heading down towards turn 1? That's got to be a lot of brain power, right?
Yeah, and then it's front wheel drive versus rear wheel drive, and you name it. So yeah, that kind of covered the whole thing there without going. I guess if there'd have been a formula car in there, that would have been pretty good too.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I really don't know. It's just never been something I thought a whole lot about. I just got into them and drove them, and just I think I'm good at getting the best out of the car.
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter whether it's front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. I just keep working at it until I get what I feel is the best out of it. And I can sense what it's not doing or I'm not doing, and then work on that.
Right.
It's kind of a sense for when the car is really at the limit or not. So if it's a front wheel drive, it gets to a different kind of a limit.
Sure.
But it's a sense that it is at the limit. So it's something like that. That's as much thought as I've ever put into it.
Yeah. Now, do you wrench on your own cars when you're doing the club racing stuff?
Quite a bit, yeah. Yeah, I've done both. I've done some where I just completely get in, like Joe Aquilani's cars have been pretty much a get in them and drive them. Tommy Aquilani, Joe's brother, who was running a sedan, I would help him wrench on the cars and sometimes go to his shop and help him wrench them. The B-Spec Sonic, I did everything myself. I built the cars and wrenched them, and most of the time I was the only one there. It was me at the track with the car and did my thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with Tommy on the sedan car, it was just me and Tommy, and he might have one guy.
Sure. Or
he had his 2 daughters would always be helping wrench on the car too.
Yeah.
Amy and Beth. Great family.
What do you like more, engineering or driving?
Well, I love the engineering. I do really like the engineering, but I should say I really like the engineering, but I love the driving. How's that sound?
There you go.
Yeah. And if I didn't do both of them, I'm not sure the whole package would feel very good to me.
Right.
I'm not sure I'd be very good at just driving and not doing any of the engineering. Even with Pratt & Miller, they allowed me to talk into the engineering part of it,
Right, right.
So just to get in the car and drive and have somebody do all the engineering and not be a part of that would be not very satisfying to me.
Sure, sure. What is the key to a successful runoffs?
I think it's you come up with a plan, and then you work the plan, and you work the plan in every detail that you can come up. You can change the plan if it looks like it's not the right plan, but you really have to have a plan, and then you have to put all the detail together so that you can execute that plan and then do it. So it's kind of like the objectives and the strategies and that kind of thing. And I know Don Knowles and I talked about that a lot when we were preparing for the runoffs. And it's like we're preparing our tire program, a fourth of the way through the year. We've started working on our tire plan for the runoffs and what we feel is going to be the best tire that we can have for the runoffs.
Right.
Whether it's going to be a bedded in tire, a slick tire, or a which compound tire, and how it's going to be treated, how we're going to prepare it. So we're doing that early in the year, and then planning to execute that at the runoffs.
Sure.
Just as an example, and you do that in every area.
Right. So last year we had a tropical storm show up. Was that not the craziest weather you've seen at the runoffs, or any race for that matter, right?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And that was my downfall last year. I was not prepared for that kind of an event.
In what sense?
Well, we had new rain tires last year, and I had never even driven on the new rain tire before the race on the runoffs.
Right.
So that right there would tell you something. You're not very prepared if you've never even driven on the tire that you're going to have to put on the car for the race.
Because the weather was good leading up to the races. There was no rain.
Yeah.
It was a little windy, but there's no rain.
Yeah, and looking, and I was prepared, and it was kind of a last minute, have to put the rain tires on. And then I didn't think we were going to. I was sure we were not going to run the rain tires. Mm-hmm. And so I hadn't put that much work into them. And so we had to put rain tires and had to put them not on our best wheels. I didn't know what the pressure needed to be on the rain tires. So there's just lots of little things there that I didn't do right.
Yeah.
And we still got close. But when you've got the guy who you're racing against who does do all those things right, you're kind of screwed.
Exactly. Well,
and Marshall did that. He did everything right.
Sure. And in club racing, I mean, I don't know what kind of a testing program you get to run, but even in a testing program, if you don't find a test day that's raining, and you just don't hit a rain race in your whole season, there's really no way to prepare a brand new rain tire, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the way it was. The places that I went, the driving that I did, it wasn't rain.
Yeah, you'll be ready for it though this year.
I also think I had won the previous runoff, so I didn't have to run any racing during the year.
Oh, okay.
So that bit me too. So I was pretty lax on experience and doing driving. That's why I didn't run the new tires and that kind of thing.
Sure. So because you didn't win last year's national championship, you had to qualify this year.
Yes.
How has your season gone?
Well, it's gone all right. So the big change this year is going to a new car in a different class.
Right.
So out of the T4 class, which I ran the last 5 years, I think, in the T4 class, to a T2 class, running a Cadillac sedan, a new Blackwing Cadillac.
Oh, I know. I knew we'd get there eventually.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big change and something I decided to do. I've actually been kind of trying to do that for the last couple of years. I spent a lot of my last part of my career at GM working on Cadillac and working on the V Series.
Right.
I was responsible for all the engineering on the V Series up until I retired from the very first one. And so I've got a pretty soft place in my heart for the Cadillac, especially the V Series. And the people that I worked with at GM who were much younger than me, I retired and they went on and have really done a fabulous job of engineering the V Series Cadillacs and the Blackwing Cadillacs, and I'm good friends with them. And so oftentimes sipping a bourbon, we've been talking about racing those in club racing as well as professional racing. We started pro racing in the Cadillac back when I did the first V Series Cadillac in 2004, and that's when we entered the World Challenge racing with the Cadillac program with Max Angelelli and Andy Pilgrim, and that was very successful. And we've all felt the need to continue that on with Cadillacs and World Challenge. And then when the World Challenge, when they decided not to go that way anymore and go into the prototypes, the folks that had worked with at GM were still very interested in something more grassroots-like for the Corvette, or for the Cadillac. It's nice to have the prototypes and that kind of thing. That's really a good thing for the brand.
Right.
But I've always been a big fan of grassroots racing and working on what I'd call the high volume end of that spectrum instead of the one single prototype running at Le Mans or at Daytona. I think you get more of the grassroots networking effect out of the grassroots racing. And so they've been interested in that too, and we finally made it happen this year with the Blackwing. And so I'm really pleased to be driving the car. It's a great car. I wish SCCA would be a little more easy on us with the BOP, but I understand when you bring out a car the first year of the car and that kind of thing, they are more willing to keep the clamps on it until they see what it can really do, and then they understand what to allow in the BOP and not. So I understand the way that needs to be done technically. I don't like being on that end, but
I love how us race car drivers like to set our expectations low. So you were at Sebring, right, with the Blackwing?
Yes, I drove at Homestead was the very first race,
right.
And then Sebring the second race.
So I was fortunate enough to get to call the Super Tour races this year on the SCCA channel, and we're at Sebring, and the T2 cars come out, and the first time you came by, I'm like, what was that? And then the second time I really paid attention, and I'm like, what in the world? It was just the coolest looking car on the racetrack, and whether it felt good, it looked good on what we were able to see.
Yeah, I think we did a great job of picking the color and the scheme, and well, even the sponsors. It all just kind of works on the car, and to me, it's a beautiful car. It's a great looking car.
And it looked like the car was working, though. It was kind of it looked like it was hooked up. It looked like we were able to put the power down. It looked like a very, very well sorted race car.
Yeah, and in fact, it's completely stock suspension.
That's crazy.
Stock springs and shocks and roll bars and bushings and brakes. The brakes are stock. So everything about the car is quite stock. The engine, transmission, rear end is all completely stock, never been opened up, and is all using production calibrations from the factory.
That is so cool.
So it's fun to run it that way. But there's things I keep wanting to do and I just can't do them. So
right now, do you have a Toyota 86?
That's what I was running in T4 before.
Right.
We don't have that anymore.
So Brittany Summers just puts in the chat, your Toyota 86 and Cadillac are the cleanest race cars I've ever seen, especially for black cars. How do you keep them clean on the racetrack?
There's a guy named whose name is Bob Wagaman.
Okay.
He's doing that from the time the car comes in until it's back out on the track all the time. Drew Spoto manages the team and runs the team, and he demands that. He wants the car always looking its best, always.
Yeah.
And Andrea, his wife, she's been really big on making sure the decals are exactly right and polishing it from the time it comes off the truck till it goes back on the truck. So yeah, they're very, very detail oriented about that part of it.
What was his name again?
Bob Wagaman.
Bob Wagaman. So Brittany, you need to find yourself a Bob Wagaman and hire that person to keep and just go after you. When you stop at the grocery store, have them wipe down the car. When you stop at the auto parts store, have them wipe down the car. Just keep them with you everywhere you go.
So we've got a guy like that who's keeping the car clean all the time, and he works on the car some with the Stu, mechanic wise. But then PJ, Paul Johns, is our he manages the car, the parts, the hauling, and that kind of thing. And so he's got that trailer. He knows where everything is in that trailer all the time. Always on top of that.
So,
and then Steve Morris, mechanic on the team, is really hardworking, able to do anything we need mechanic wise. And Drew is amazingly good at a mechanic on the cars too.
right.
You know, our team manager, general manager of the whole operation. He is really good. He personally does the brake changes. He doesn't want anybody else doing brake changes. I'm going to do them. And so we just kind of have that mentality about doing everything.
Yeah. So over the course of 16 national championships and many more races than that, you've got to have some stories to tell. So dig back in the Wayback Machine. I'm going to do a little business here, and I'm going to ask you to tell a story here right after I get done with this. I just want to take a second here and thank all of the folks who help us make this happen. And we cannot do these shows, especially our trip to the runoffs here, without the good people at Goodyear Racing Tires. They are our presenting sponsor at the runoffs, and I can't thank them enough for everything they do. Also want to mention that RaceKeeper is the official in-car video system of the Inside the SCCA. We posted some video from Solo Nationals. It was a perfect example of how good the video system works and how bad I am as a solo driver. But you can get a good chuckle out of it by watching the videos. But pay less attention to my driving acumen and more attention to how great that video looks and the overlays and everything. And it's really easy to do that once you get the system set up. And it doesn't take that much to get it set up. So want to take a chance to thank the good people at RaceKeeper. And, of course, you know, SCCA now requires a front and back view video camera at all of the majors and the runoffs. And you can use the RaceKeeper system for that, and it's at a really great price point. Also want to remind the folks who are going to the runoffs that they have a contingency program with put the 3 stickers on there, and I believe it's $300 for a first place win at the runoffs. And just make sure you've got those 3 stickers on the car, and they will be happy to write you a check if you win a title. And I think they're also paying out through 3rd place if you've got the stickers as well. So big thank you to Goodyear Racing Tires and RaceKeeper for helping us get to the runoffs and all of your support for the show. All right, we're back here with John Heinricy here, 16-time national champion. It's story time, John. Got a good one for us?
Boy, that's a tough one to come up with good stories. You know, engineering stories aren't very fun to hear.
All right, so tell us about your hardest battle for a championship.
Well, I'll tell you, last year, now I didn't win last year, but the battle with Marshall last year was pretty hard.
Yeah.
That was difficult in changing conditions from almost being, you know, close to dry to start with, and then to being quite wet in the middle of it and then drying up at the end of it. That was a big chore. That was a hard race to do.
Now, was T4 the last race on Friday?
I don't last remember. Year.
Yeah.
I think we were early.
Okay. Because
I think we were early. We were like first or second race in the morning, I think.
Yeah, I think it was maybe T3. The final race on Friday was the worst weather conditions I've ever seen a race raced in. I honestly thought they were going to push that race to Saturday morning or Sunday or something. But they went out there, and I believe that race was green to checker or very close to it. Those guys put on a clinic on how to drive in really junky conditions.
Yeah, I think a very competitive race was my GT1 race in the first year in 1993.
Okay.
It was a big field of GT1 cars at Road Atlanta, and the top few cars were pretty dang close. And we had 1 or 2 yellows, so we had restarts to go through. So that was really had to stay on top of the game there. But I'd say the races with Andy McDermott in a sedan have probably been the most challenging.
Okay.
Andy McDermott and Tom Slow.
Sure.
Between those 2 guys, those have been really challenging races. T1 had some good fun racing with and against Scotty White.
Yep.
For half a dozen years, 5 years. There is one story that has to do with Scotty White. Sort of doesn't, but Scotty is part of the story just because of Scotty.
Of course.
So I was out on the track with the Corvette, and I was running, and I came in and I had a flat tire.
Okay.
And I'm talking to the crew. So we're always razzing each other about Scotty White on track, off track, and with Scotty. So anyway, one of the guys on the crew who sometimes had a bit of an attitude heard me say when I came in, and I said something about that big asshole, and he says what I really said was that big asshole, referring to the hole in the tire because it was blown out and had this big hole in the sidewall. And so I said something about that big asshole, and he thought I was talking about Scotty White. And I said, "Why would you think I was talking about Scotty White?" "Well, he's big, and he was out there racing with you at the time, and." But man, we got a big kick out of that. Yeah. I hope Scotty's listening because I probably never told him about that.
Scotty's a friend of the show, so there's a good chance he is listening.
Yeah, that's good.
I referred to him once, I think on a Super Tour broadcast, as I told people, Scotty White's a guy who's not short on opinions and not afraid to share them. So
yeah.
No, he's a great guy, and he's been.
Yeah, this year at the Runoffs, I got to be sure to tell him that story about that.
That's great. That's great. So, do you think the drivers in T4 are real upset that you're in T2 this year?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything about it or talked to any of them, so don't know.
So, I don't know anybody who loves to make predictions, but do you feel pretty good about the car going into the Runoffs this year?
I really do. I think we've got a chance. We have to do everything right. But if we do everything right, we've been through quite a few things this year on the car with just getting going. With little things that happen, and we've got to sort them out and come up. We have problems that we have to figure out what it is. But just because we don't have much experience with the car and it's new for racing.
Yeah.
But we worked our way through that, and now I think we can get as much as we can out of the car.
Yeah.
So hopefully the weather holds and we're able to make a good race out of it. I think we race mid-afternoon this time on Sunday.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the car's a good car. I think it looks good, sounds good, and I enjoy driving it. So that got guys who like working on it. So I think we've got the team that really is ready to put out all we can and show what we can do.
Sure. There's lots
now I've got some good friends in T2 that I have to race against too, like Kurt.
Yeah.
Kurt Resitano, good friends with Kurt, so that'll be fun. Just like it was racing with Marshall last year. Those guys know what they're doing. They're good. How would you like to go to the Runoffs and knowing that you're either going to run against Kurt Resitano, Marshall, or Andrew Aquilani?
Yeah, there's some talent there.
Yeah, how would you like to go? And you've got each class you're going to run in, you're going to run against those guys.
Nothing wrong. So how many cars are you running this year?
I'm just going to run one though this year.
Just going to run one. Okay.
Yep. Just decided to back down a little bit and focus on this one. Being a new project, it's going to take a little bit more of my time.
Sure.
Than some of the others might. So.
What you could go racing anywhere, I'm guessing. You could take these cars to other series and race, but you come to the SCCA and do your thing. Why do you stay with us and do your stuff here?
I think that there's a big organization there that's doing a lot of good things. I just see the way they run the events. I've been to a lot of pro events that aren't run as well as SCCA runs their amateur events.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of it. And there's the people who are racing are kind of more involved in what they're doing and what's going on, with their cars, both technically and from a race management standpoint. So you have have drivers who are kind of involved in all of that thing versus in the pros, you've got drivers, you've got people who manage the races, you've got people who manage the build of the car and all that kind of stuff. And you might be the driver who is hired to drive those cars. But here in SCCA, you're involved in everything from the ground up.
Right.
And it's kind of more friends and family oriented, I think, would be a way to describe it. And I like that atmosphere.
Sure. Let's circle back to the pro stuff just for a minute before we let you go. A lot of big changes in the international sports car world these days. The GT Le Mans is gone, and now it's the whole GT field has changed up. Corvette's now doing a customer car program. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, it is interesting that I was surprised that they were focusing on a customer program. I really was surprised at that. But then when you just hear what was it, a couple of months ago when it was announced that Pratt & Miller was going to be running a car, I suspected something like that might happen because if you're oriented to want to have success, I think in order to really kind of guarantee that success, you have to have full control over what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And with customer programs, you don't have full control with what's going on. Now, you can still be successful with customer programs, but I think if you want to give it your best shot, I think you need to have more control than you would on a strictly customer program.
Right.
And then with a program where you've got a Pratt & Miller running a car, you've also got the opportunity then to help the customer programs be better.
Right. As long as Pratt & Miller's sharing all of their secrets with the customers, that's what's key, or else the customer starts getting teed off. And,
sure.
And and I'm sure that's always the case. But it's hard to argue with the success of some of the better customer programs. The Porsche GT3R program. There's some money to be made there. So you can spread the pain out across a lot more customers. And I think there's some validity into the thought process to be able to do that. And Porsche has proved that they can do it pretty well. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why maybe Corvette decided to go that route.
Yeah, well, and it's, Porsche's done really well with it, and they've got a lot of experience doing it. And that's part of, their programs may not have been all that great from the start, from back when they started doing this, but they sure have made it work.
Right.
And so now if you're deciding to do a customer program now and you don't have their experience, you're a little bit behind the eight ball.
Sure. Yep.
So I think bringing Pratt & Miller back into running a car, I think can help the customer programs.
Yep. So it's the 60th Runoffs this year.
Wow, 60th. I guess I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So it's the 60th this year. You're going to be around with us to race at the 70th?
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
But I have spoken to a number of my friends when they asked me about how long I'm going to race and that kind of thing. And I said, well, I do have a goal.
Okay.
And they said, well, what is that goal? And I said, I want to win the Runoffs when I'm 80 years old.
So, and you're how old now?
76.
Okay. So
I only have 4 more years to do that.
So you'll at least be at the 64th.
Yeah.
So and then maybe
75th would be a tall order, but
yeah, that'd be. I was just thinking the 70th, but yeah, we'll get you there.
Yeah.
We'll get you there. John, thank you. I appreciate it. We had some technical difficulties to get us on the air, but once we got on the air, this was gold like I expected it to be. So I really appreciate you working through it with me. And I know that the folks on the other side of the screen here are enjoying it as well.
Good. Thank you. I enjoyed it myself.
You want to thank some folks before we get out?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Wow, when Drew talked to me before this tonight, he said, "Now don't forget to mention the sponsors. You got to talk about the sponsors." And then of course Cadillac, GM and Cadillac Engineering have been there to give me help on the car when I need it, which has been just priceless to be able to. I call it my 1-800 phone a friend. when you're trying to solve a problem and you can't get there, and finally you do that 1-800 phone a friend, and if that phone a friend happens to be an engineer at Cadillac who is willing to help you over the phone, man, I tell you,
That's big.
That's really big. But then some of the people who've been with me a long time, like Hoosier Tire and Mobile Oil, that I had Mobile Oil on my car starting back in 1983, 84 when I first started racing. So it's been that long with the folks at Mobile. So that's been really big. It's been a great relationship. And then Hawk products with Hawk pads and Hawk brake parts. That's also been a real mainstay. I've been with them a long time, and I think we've worked together really well. So I love that. And then Joe Akalani with Phoenix Racing has been just, he and I have known each other for a long time. When I first met Joe, he was renting a ride in one of the cars on the team I was running in Firehawk back in 1988, 89.
Sure.
And that's where he had been running in SCCA prior to that, doing his own thing. But then he decided to push himself a bit and get into some pro racing, and that's where he started, was doing that, and then developed into a team that's a hell of a force right now for anybody to reckon with. If Phoenix Racing is racing in your class, you've got your work ahead of you.
Yeah, if you beat those guys, you've done something good.
Yeah. And then Drew, who's running the team, general manager, I've also known him a long time. He was one of the technicians on the teams that I ran with in Firehawk Racing and all the endurance racing through the 1990s and into the 2000s. Drew was one of the technicians, and he just decided he wanted to run his own cars, and so he's been doing that since, and he's been quite successful. He had Don Knowles win a couple championships with Don Knowles, and then a couple with me, and so we're having a great time.
Cool.
And then my wife, who is unfortunately she's fairly laid up right now. She just had a pretty serious accident about a week and a half ago, helping me load the Cadillac to go to the racetrack.
Uh-oh.
And she tripped over the ramp and did some pretty serious damage in the hospital for a few days, and now is in recovery. So without her, I don't know if I'd be able to ever do any of this. So
we wish her a speedy recovery. And
you bet. She won't be able to make it to the runoffs, but I know she'll be there in spirit.
Well, you'll just have to bring home another medal for her.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. Did I hear you sneak in earlier that you're a bourbon guy?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I've got a Corvette Mobile One story that I'm going to share with you at VIR over. We'll clink a glass of bourbon, and I'll tell you the story, and I guarantee you'll get a good laugh out of it. And I look forward to doing that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, John.
What kind of bourbon do you want me to bring?
Oh, well, I'll have some as well. So we'll, and I'm sure your bourbon will be better than my bourbon. But we'll connect and we'll definitely share some there. So
we'll do that.
John Heinricy, 16-time national champion. Thank you so much. And that is going to do it for another episode of Inside the SCCA. Did you like what you hear? Subscribe to the Racingwire Podcast Network or the Racing Network on YouTube so you won't miss any episodes. Also, be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. Follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is and leave a question. On Twitter, it's @RacingWireNet. You can catch us every week with a new episode of Inside the SCCA. That would be on Wednesday nights. We're live here on YouTube. And then, of course, the podcast comes down on Friday mornings. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a great weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.
I'm Dorsey Schrader, and when I'm on my way to a race, I'll listen to the SCCA podcast, Inside the Short Bus.
Inside the SCCA is a presentation of the Racingwire Podcast Network and Rule 15 Productions. This podcast is not affiliated with, endorsed, or sponsored by the Sports Car Club of America. The views expressed within are those of the host and our guests and not that of the SCCA.